Hey everybody, Matt Hill. I'm sitting here with some impressive friends of mine. I'm in the Pharaoh Energy Services office. They're always so gracious to continue to provide this space to platform people that we are impressed by and want to get their story. I'm just going to get right to it. I'd love for you to introduce yourself to everybody.
All right, sir. I'm Marvin Meshack. By training, I have a degree in chemistry, and I spent my first 36 years working at the laboratories in Halliburton in Duncan, Oklahoma. And since then, I've ended up in chemical sales. Started out with Chemplex, which ended up being sold to Solvay, and then with additional mergers, I left them and ended up I'm still working currently with Moon Chemical out of Oklahoma City.
All right, everybody else, you know who this famous guy is. Josh, is that you breathing?
Man, I'm just fat. if you'll shave about 50 pounds off of
I'm
me.
worried about like the train coming in here. Well, before you die on my set, go ahead and introduce yourself, Ryan.
I'm Ryan Sanders. I'm a COO of Pharaoh Energy Services, and they known Marvin for about 15 years and stuff, and just an honor to be here on the podcast with you and
Well, thank you,
to
sir.
hear some of the stories that I've heard over the years and stuff, and just amazed of just the wealth of knowledge that you have and the inspiration that you have to hopefully there's some younger people that listen to this and just learn from what they've seen back in the past. And it's amazing, the technology. And it's not that long ago. You know, you get to really thinking about it. You've been 8 years at Moon. You said 22 years at Solvay, and then you're
36 at Halliburton. Yeah, I thought I was retired when I left Halliburton, and just still going, I guess.
Yeah.
64 years in the industry.
That's unreal.
That's incredible. And that was one of the reasons I'd called Matt. I had lunch with Marvin the other day, and I called Matt, and I said, I really want to get Marvin in and get him on the podcast and pick his brain because, I mean, I don't know anybody else in the Oklahoma. I'm sure there might be one or two people in the entire world that's been in the industry for this many years and still actively working. And like Ryan said, just a ton of knowledge, and it's just a privilege to be here. Marvin, can't wait to have this conversation and see, hear some of the stories about the old days. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we're really looking forward to this.
That was Josh McCollom, and he's my friend.
I'm Matt's friend.
Yeah. Ryan, do you have a succession plan to hand over the company to Josh? I don't.
That's just scary.
Hey, I tell everybody right now, everybody asks me how busy I am. I'm about as close to retirement as you can be and still work. So Josh is already doing a great job.
I just know that Marvin is going to last a lot longer than you with the way you're breathing right now. Pull that microphone up to your mouth. Everybody wants to hear what you have to say the rest of the day. And then breathe away from my microphone. Marvin.
It doesn't matter where I go. I always get picked on. And the older I've gotten, the better I've gotten at just taking.
Marvin, it is an honor, sir. Our industry, I really hope that everybody calls you and asks you a lot of questions. I mean, we constantly talk about this, Josh and I, about the brain drain from our industry. Your experience, your expertise, your just wisdom, insights, knowledge base has, grown so much over the years. There's probably not much within your silo, or probably a lot outside of your silo in chemistry and drilling, completions, production. Your world and universe in the energy field is so vital for us to try to understand. And if people like you continue to give back like you are today, we all hope that everybody utilizes that experience while you still feel like you can give it. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being here, and for Josh finally divulging that he had a treasure trove of people like you to bring on here.
There's a few others. So let's one of the things, Marvin, is I think it's fascinating. I've heard some of the stories before, but can you kind of walk us through how you got started at Halliburton and and how you got there, and then let's kind of go from there on to now.
Well, I guess start out, I was a farm boy from Kansas and end up with a degree. And the big jobs for a chemist would be like in Houston or San Francisco or New York, and I checked none of the above that it really appealed to me. And Halliburton was in Duncan, Oklahoma, which was a little more small town type of environment. So anyway, I ended up working there. I guess in a way, to have worked in the lab, I ended up working for people who sent me to the field to follow jobs fairly often. I certainly don't have the experience of somebody that works in the field every day, but at least I had connections with what was happening in the world, which probably helped me a lot to see what the problems actually were. And maybe a little bit of that experience, you can do a lot of things in the lab that don't really work when you're out in the field. So, and anyway, started there, and I've seen a lot of the world. Some of it, I always said I'm glad I was there, but I'd never want to go back again. And I can name Yemen as one of the first ones. But I've been all the way to the North Slope and all the way south to Bolivia. Spent some time in Halliburton had a lab in Holland, and we go over there occasionally. And then tour of the Middle East. That was one of those tours that we're in Egypt, so it must be Tuesday, type of thing. We hit about 9 different countries over there in a fairly short time on it.
Josh told me in no uncertain terms that our entire globe has been affected in a positive way because of your contributions to our industry, and especially in the chemical side of things, because of just your input on so many ways we now utilize that chemistry and deploy it all over the globe. I mean, we would not be where we're at as an industry without your impact. And I don't want you to ever downsell that. I know it's hard for men in our industry to pat themselves on the back, but it's an impressive story that I want people to know about where we used to be and where we've come, to today. Well, I mean, what were the first things people were doing in, our modern industry with chemistry, and where have you seen, that development and refinement, continue that you're excited about?
Well, one of the things is like on the frac jobs, of course, now they're using friction reducers mainly, but at the time I started, we were using either a cellulose or a guar gum gelling agents, and they actually had gel screens in the system because there were so many lumps that would form with that first gel, and there's been some developments that where you can still use powder, and it doesn't tend to lump quite as badly. And of course, the gel slurries were developed where it's already in liquid form and can be pumped in and mixed, and it gels up essentially lump free on it. And the equipment, the hydrators, or if you use a powder for anything, they're better at blending than they were when we started out. It was one thing I was thinking about was, of course, there was a man on every pump that was operating the engines, shifting gears, throttling up, operating the pumps. And now, of course, well, they were out in the weather. Joke used to be in Rock Springs that an old hand was a man who had been with them through one winter and was still working for them. It was pretty rough. They were standing out, I like to say, on an open truck out there operating the equipment on it. Of course, the big thing, and we've mentioned, there were no computers when I started work. The calculations for a job were essentially by hand, and they had some theories and ways of calculating, but realistically, it was what worked in that field in that area. It was kind of hit or miss on it. And once they found something that was operating well, they'd continue that. The gel systems were all what we call linear. Now, essentially everything you pump is cross-linked, borate cross-linked gel. When we started out, it was just we just pumped like 50 pounds of Guar gum per 1,000 and go up to about 3 pounds of sand. It depended on the formation, obviously, but that was typical how much they'd run. Something that's different, this gets a little bit technical, but the linear gel, the sand they'd sand would build up in the bottom of the fracture, and you would have some free fluid then. So the pad, you didn't actually need as much pad with that because the sand would come out and you'd generate a pad to go ahead and create the fracture. We kind of learned the hard way. I was involved with the first cross-linked gel that we pumped, and we pumped a 50-pound gel, except it was cross-linked, and we were adding 100 mesh sand as a fluid loss additive in the pad on it, and we were going 3 pounds with it. Anyway, if you picture a 50-pound cross-linked gel and the fact we didn't allow for the 100 mesh sand soaking up water, we ended up with what looked like a Dairy Queen that we were trying to pump into the formation there. We nearly screened out on the pad, if that's possible, on it. We were maxed out on the pressure on it all the way.
Where was that job at, Marvin?
It was in East Texas, out around Kilgore area.
That was one of the first cross-linked jobs?
It was one of the first ones. Like I say, we kind of learned things the hard way on that. And also, you think crosslink will never have to worry about screening out. The point, that the linear gel actually dropped the sand. I mean, it built a sand bank, but you still had the fracture being generated. With a crosslink, once you used up your pad, you had nothing, but you were trying to create a fracture then with sand. And so we had some problems. Some of the first crosslink jobs, which you thought couldn't screen out, where we were having trouble putting sand away.
Did you ever think back then that fast forward 60 years we'd be pumping 20-pound crosslink systems? No. Actually, there was some of that actually in the Midland area. There was some of the operators that that's how they save money. Instead of the 50-pound gel, they had learned they could go with a crosslink, borate crosslink on a like a 20-pound gel and such, put the jobs away. One thing I mentioned, the horsepower. Actually, I came in when they had, I'll say, made a pretty good step upward on the horsepower. They had the twin HT 400 pumps, two of them on a truck with. They had let's see, it was 600 horsepower diesel engines running each one of them. So with two of them together on a truck, you could, if things were running good, you could get about 1,000 hydraulic horsepower out of a truck. And, well, you know better than I do, but, you more than double that now on what one truck will do. And typically we were looking at 5 or 6 trucks on a job out there. Well, I remember bragging about a 50-barrel blender that they had developed, that it would handle 50 barrels a minute, which was ahead of what most jobs were. Most jobs were in the 25, get up to 40 barrels pumping. Well, back then, you guys probably gelled everything up in the tanks too.
Oh yes, yeah. And nothing like getting a good outbreak of bacteria going to break that gel, and so you needed to make sure the tanks, if the tanks had been used and left just set, you always had a few gallons left in the bottom. In that hot sun on those tanks, you'd have bacteria bloom in there, and then they'd go in gel on top of that. And yeah, those tanks, I've actually measured tanks where I'd go down the line, and down the line wasn't very long, maybe 5 or 6 frac tanks. You go down the line, measure the viscosity, and then you'd turn around and come back, and it'd already dropped to 3 or 4 centipoise in just a matter of minutes. So you had to fight the bacteria on it.
Well, I'm curious. So, what was your typical, I guess, quality control or lab setup back then on those jobs? Like, what piece of equipment did you have to do all of your testing and everything with?
Well, the main half of it was just measuring the pH, actually, and get the pH set right. We had portable fan viscometers, Model 35 fan viscometers that you could operate off a battery, had a converter, and so we could measure viscosity. That, I'll have to say, that wasn't an everyday event on them. A lot of it was realistically just looking at the gel and how well it looked like you had it mixed. And
Going by feel and sight.
Yep.
Yeah, which we still do a bunch today.
Which,
It's crazy that we still use fan 35s. I mean, what a machine to be invented 65 years ago, and we're still using them today.
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
an incredible machine.
All right. If y'all are listening, are you grasping how long he's been in our industry yet? How many years is that, Josh? Come on, do a math. You're an engineer.
64? Is it 64 or 65 years, Marvin?
well, came in 62, so 1962. So if we
64
can,
years.
somebody can do the math there.
Well, I have an engineer sitting right next to me, and I like to see math like waft out of his head immediately when we ask him a math question.
64 years is a long time.
Ryan, you got to have some questions, bud.
Oh, they, it's interesting. I've known them enough, so I've heard the stories and that kind of stuff. And really the way I met Marvin is, or kind of introduced to him, is we were on a job having problems with a crosslinked fluid, and the customer that we were using, or the vendor we were using at the time, was not giving us the support that we needed to do the job successfully. Anyway, I called a guy named Henry Wiggins out in, he was in the
He was in the lab, with Chemplex lab in the Midland.
Snyder area.
Well, okay, Snyder.
Yep. And anyway, got introduced to Marvin. He just says, "Hey, have you checked pH? Have you checked this?" And just start going through the list. And within about 2 hours, man, we were successfully pulling that job off. I mean, he was able to give us the information we needed to perform that job over the phone. That's how much knowledge this guy has. And just impressive. There's been times in my career that I'm like, man, I need a question. Man.
You have the Oracle.
Oh, yeah. He's the 911 call.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. I've had three different guys. Marvin, one of them, and then a gentleman that Marvin knows very well trained me. His name was Phil Blackmore. Trained me in Jed, and a guy that was just incredible with cross-linked fluid systems, and so he trained me in Jed. But every single one of these guys were there kind of when it was getting started, invented, and so I was smart enough, and Ryan was, to shut our mouths and listen when these guys were explaining stuff to us. And so it's just incredible what we've done with that technology that you guys created back then, and how we've continually added technology to that and got to the point to where we are now. We're still pumping the same type of fluid systems. We've got them fine-tuned. I mean, some of our breakers and stuff have changed, but it's incredible. And Ryan's right. I mean, man, I don't know how many times I've called Marvin and said, "Hey, I can't figure this out." And within 5 minutes talking on the phone, we figure out the problem and get it resolved. And it seems like a simple solution, but it's really not. It's incredible.
Sometimes you just need to be around people and bounce ideas off of them, so they'll give you the information that if you think about it, 20 years ago, we didn't have Google, YouTube, all that stuff. You had to pay attention to these older guys and learn from them. And, man, I can base my career on that. Just listen to these guys, and, man, they teach you so much. Sometimes it's what not to do, but a lot of times it's what you should be doing.
Yeah, I assume that neither one of you would be sitting next to me in this podcast studio and be somebody else's other than Pharaoh's. I'd still be here, obviously, but without you, Marvin, these two guys could not have achieved what they have.
Well, I think they would have succeeded anyway, quite honestly. You've been very kind, but, I was talking about the developments. One thing I've noticed is, in the oil patch, it seems like a lot of times the same thing comes back around again. it's kind of, and somebody's rediscovered the same thing over again, and you'll see what was forgotten about, 25 years ago, and somebody decides to do it again. Sometimes it works again in the areas. Of course, now the big thing on the horizontal fractures is in the shales, and you couldn't. You could treat the shales, but not really well. Usually they weren't that productive with just the vertical conventional fractures until they developed the horizontal fractures. It was a interesting story. There was a operator in Colorado in a shale area, and Halliburton came out with a a foamed oil frac system, and the man had him do a job there, and he raved about the success of it, and asked him to do another job. Well, of course, that's what they were there for, and so he did the second job, and he was so proud of it that he wanted to publish a paper on it. And so, of course, writing a paper in a technical journal on how successful we could treat this formation that no one had been able to treat before sounded like a great idea. And as we got closer and closer to publishing the paper, some people started saying things that didn't quite jive. And it turned out these jobs really weren't that good, and the man was a promoter. And he was about to use Halliburton to sell his operations in the field in this zone. And fortunately, they pulled out of that quick enough. But he's claimed to have a way to really treat these shales at that time.
Well, that's what I mean. Fortunately for me, I take the wisdom that you bring into this, and the reason why we all like to learn about the past and what used to be done is because once we gain that knowledge and you explain all of that, then we can come back to you with a lot more questions about, okay, you explain the past, now give me your wisdom on what we're doing right now and then what we should change. Those kind of answers. I don't have, any other, people to bounce that stuff off of. I look to the more seasoned professionals in my industry and go, man, what do you think we need to, what are we doing right? And then what do we need to refine? What do you think?
Well, what is right, again, is the horizontal fractures. About the time I was leaving Halliburton, they were nowhere near where they are now, but they were going out horizontally, trying to go out, but if you went out very far, you'd get hung up and not be able to pull the pipe back. But they were experimenting with drilling out horizontally. And so what they can do now is to me is really impressive. And like I say, it's some of these tight zones that they can open up and get production out of them that they couldn't really successfully treat before on that. What's coming, I guess I don't have that good a crystal ball on I feel like some of these formations, I see some of the Mississippi Chat, a lot of the areas along the state line, Kansas and Oklahoma state line, they've kind of hit it, and a lot of them are moving on. They're just, they may be some independent that's still pumping the wells, but they're not much production. I don't think I'll see it, but I think someday somebody will come back to those again with an improved system again, because there's still, even when you think you've drained it, there's still a lot of oil to be produced.
Yeah, we're arguably, all of the best production out there, we're still only getting around that 10% mark of production out of our resources and our well bores.
I couldn't quote the exact amount, but I do know we leave a lot behind on it. That's definitely true on it. And like I say, that's where somebody will come up with a new method to handle this. Of course, you've got the water floods and different systems are out there, but there'll probably be something else.
And I think we already have the technology. We've got friends right here in Oklahoma. We can go attack these, water wells, so more efficiently now. We can not just really recycle that water into pure water, almost at the same cost you could do saltwater injection. But with that technology, we can also look at, ways to harvest resources inside of that, water and divide it up amongst its, little molecules and use that in all kinds of, new recycled manners.
Oh, yes.
Lithium, we're able to pull that out now for batteries. I mean, it's fascinating what they're doing. Are you excited about, a lot of people, so many people are talking about, we have roughly 1 million wells producing in the United States, actually producing that are on the books according to the EIA, right?
Close, I think.
Yeah. And so many of those should probably be looked at to have, people like you in, the chemistry field and refrac, so you have frac companies and amazing chemists that should join forces and go, hey, let's go see if we can improve production on the marginal wells.
Yes.
So speaking of that, and I was wanting Marvin to visit a little bit about this, but one of the big things that I've always enjoyed calling, and it's kind of a black art, is acidizing in the oil and gas industry. And so Marvin's a huge resource when it comes to acidizing, and so I was curious and wanted to pick your brain a little bit how you've sort of seen that change over the years, because I know you were involved with a lot of the acidizing services at Halliburton early on, and especially there in the lab developing some different formulas and some different blends and things like that too. So
there's I don't know how much is new. I mean, it's still hydrochloric acid as a standby. That's I've seen a lot of things tried, phosphoric acid, different things, but for one reason or another, for the dollar spent, you can't do any better than hydrochloric acid on treating limestone. And of course, we mentioned some. You get into sandstone, you can make the HF, hydrofluoric acid, is practical in that area. Usually about a 3% strength of it. But some of these have been around. Some of them is kind of interesting because, again, when I first started, about 15% was as high as you'd go on a HCl. But the main reason was corrosion inhibitors. They didn't have good enough corrosion inhibition to protect the pipe when you were getting up to 28% HCl, especially if you had any temperature with it on it. So the corrosion inhibitors have let them go higher. I wasn't involved directly, but I know we'd pumped one job down in Louisiana where they actually used arsenic as a corrosion inhibitor. The temperature was so high that they didn't have any inhibitor at that time, and I know Halliburton did not, quote, take possession of the arsenic. It was always owned by the oil company, and we pumped it. That's all. It was up to them to dispose of the empty drums and everything. But and Louisiana had abnormally high temperature and high pressures, and they ran into some problems. They had good production, but problems handling it on some of those.
Do you see any problems in our industry right now that you'd like to tackle?
Oh boy, that's a good question.
I mean, from my understanding of Josh, people, you don't really need to do much business development because what you've done already has become very successful. But people call you for answers, and hey, here's a problem.
Well, of course, most of what I work with is problems that I guess you'd say there is already an existing answer for that or a different way of looking at it and such. But as far as what's coming, I don't know. There's some things, and maybe y'all can answer this better. The viscosifying friction reducers, those are just kind of on the horizon. That the last I knew, are they becoming successful, or is it going to be any better than just the regular FR materials that you use? I don't want to put one of you on the spot.
No, not at all. I think with that, it's the equipment. It's if you're using the FR and the way it builds, it's a lot quicker. You don't have to have a hydration unit out there. You don't have the guy to be able to run it. So they're getting away from the gel side of it just because But we've been doing a lot of fracturing where we're still using gel, and we're making some really good wells out of them. And I think the biggest thing that you're going to see probably in the next 5 to 10 years, there's a big push for data right now and the energy that's going to run those centers. There's been some articles and stuff come out about the Barnett Shale. That was what started all of this 20 years ago. They're talking about going back into the Barnett Shale because it's close to a lot of things where they need to get more energy out of it to be able to supply these data centers that's coming in.
Behind the meter power.
100%. You're seeing it come. And, so are we going to start going to formations that we haven't been? The bottleneck right now in the Permian is pipelines. You can't get the gas out of there. So are they going to go to other areas of the country and where they can get the energy to be able to supply these data centers?
I just want every operator to think about another option, which is every single well site should be its own little data center. We can go micro on that. I mean, again, I go to Permian Basin Oil Show. You've probably been to, plenty of events, and you've seen technology continue to grow. Now we can have flare stack get changed into powering a gensetter turbine engine. Yeah. You put a BESS system out there that you can bring in on a flatbed. And then you put a data center, if everybody still doesn't understand, it's a box with rack space that has continuous clean power, and you put whatever kind of computers in there you want. And obviously Starlink isn't quite set up for that bottleneck of internet speed that you need, but it sure is a lot cheaper and a lot easier regulatory wise to drag out fiber optic cable to a well site than it is to get a pipeline out there. No one in the country is going to be mad if you bring out, a fiber optic cable. Pipelines are a lot, harder on regulatory. So why not make every postage stamp of every well site a possible data center?
I think part of it is it's just like the automobile. When we first came out, everybody got around with horses, and then we come out with the automobile, and as you know, we want to go further, faster. And so the automobile gets better, and then before you know it, they're coming out with airplanes because we want to go even further, even quicker, and you just see it progress throughout our life. Have you guys ever watched the documentary Frac Nation? It came out about 15 years ago.
Yeah, ridiculous.
The best part of that whole documentary is at the very end, and he shows the world at night. And where there is light is cheap energy.
Yeah, affordable, reliable.
Yeah,
abundant.
And people live longer, healthier, happier lives over cheap energy. Could you imagine being in Africa where there's not dependable energy, trying to do a heart surgery on somebody? Like, we can't even fathom that.
So, Matt was there. We were at the Frac conference this year. It was an awesome venue they had there. But Chris Wright spoke, our Secretary of Energy, and one of the things he mentioned, and Matt was sitting right beside me when he said it, was that there's 8 billion people or so in the world, and only like 1 billion of us have access to clean power. And there's 7 billion people in the world, many of those still using animal dung to heat their homes and cook their food on. And so what you're saying is correct. Is this drive to find more energy in the world and get power in the hands of people that need it is amazing. But that's crazy to think about with our data centers going in and everything here in the United States, that so many places in the world, they have zero power, zero access to anything. And so it's awesome to be a part of the industry where, and it's also, I was sitting here listening to y'all talk about these data centers and stuff. I wanted Marvin's take on this because
Me too.
when you got started in 1962 at Halliburton, there weren't even computers around, no. And now we're building data centers and AI stuff. I mean, wow, what a change in your lifetime.
And that is yes, that's we had a mechanical. I'll say a mechanical typewriter. It looked about like nobody knows what a typewriter looks like either, I guess. But the old style typewriter, it looked like that, but it would actually, you could add and subtract, multiply and divide with it. And that was our calculations. That's all it did. We'd sit there and the wheels would spin and it would do calculations for you on that. But yes, there was nothing nothing like what we have now, and the communications and everything has totally changed. One thing I was going to mention, I don't know if y'all have heard of this or not, but they actually tried nuclear explosions to stimulate gas production.
How'd that go?
We've worked near some of those sites.
We worked near one of them.
Did you? Yeah. Okay. They tried two different ones. One was out in what they call the Four Corners area in New Mexico, and the other I think was up in northern Colorado area up in there. And I know one of them was called Gas Buggy. It was the name of the project. I don't know which one of the sites that was. But I do know, I guess they never really found out what the production was because somebody had overlooked the fact that nuclear explosion, the natural gas, of course it's CH4 carbon methane, and instead of the H of hydrogen, there are radioactive isotopes of hydrogen. And one of them is called tritium. It's got an atomic weight instead of 1. It's atomic weight of 3, and it's radioactive. And so they cannot use the natural gas out of these wells because it was so radioactive with tritium that. And I don't know how many years they've got to leave them closed in, and the half-life of tritium is fairly long. So they're still shut in as far as I know on it. They were not able to produce them.
The ones in New Mexico are still shut in. There's fences around the whole area.
Yeah.
And warning signs do not go in there. So yeah, we've worked near the one out at New Mexico.
We're explorers. I wish they would at least take core samples and go down there and see how it changed everything.
I want to say that was a four ton bomb that they set off in New Mexico.
I don't know what's. They actually, the term at that time was massive hydraulic frac, which probably was somewhere maybe a 200,000 gallon job or something. But they were comparing massive hydraulic fracs to nuclear. And of course, the nuclear didn't make it due to the radioactivity of everything.
Maybe we just needed smaller sticks of nuclear dynamite.
The thing they didn't know was whether it actually, there was two theories. One, that it would rubbleize, which would give you production out of the rubble. But the other was that it might essentially make a glass wall. They turned everything underground to glass. Yeah.
That's a lot of heat.
So, and like I say, when they found out what they were producing, they shut them in. So I don't know if they ever got production figures out of it of how much it was stimulated, I guess.
You know, it's interesting, and as you listen to him, you don't realize everything that you've seen, Marvin. If you look back in like world events for us, it would be 9/11. And then a few years ago, they start teaching that in the history book. My kids learn about that in the history book, and you're
right.
Like, man, I can remember like that was yesterday. I was visiting with Marvin before we started this, and you were 7-8 years old when they dropped the atomic bombs on Japan.
Yes.
And we think about that being so long ago. And, you were alive. I was having this conversation with my wife's granddad and talking about seeing jet motors and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
It's hard to understand that. That's just things that we read about, and you actually experienced that stuff.
They still talk about whether the dropping the bomb on Japan was a bad thing or a good thing on it. And I was old enough that I talked to several of the men that were in the service and talked to them after the war. And I know one said, well, I was on a boat heading for the invasion of Japan. He said, I don't have any doubts about whether the bomb was a good idea or not. So,
well, regardless, our world has never been more free, and our world has never been more, I don't know if safe, but, we have energy security here in the United States and the ability to, have our liberty and freedoms thanks to people like you. But that's, I can look at that very realistically and understand, like, without your influence, our industry would not have been able to produce enough energy for the globe and its energy demand, and especially during wartime. Our soldiers and military have always depended on oil and gas to be able to, be deadly, which they should be, and go defend our country or protect others. And I mean, you got to take those threads back to people like him and understand like that's a massive amount of impact.
So I've got a fun question for you, Marvin.
Uh-oh.
So you said earlier you'll be 89 years old next month.
Yes.
64 years in the industry. Any plans to retire?
Hey, he's also been married for 67 years, I think.
67 years married. That also is an incredible feat.
But it is unusual for. I remember one of my bosses, made the comment of, well, actually he said don't work too long because at probability either you or your wife, one, will not be able to get around in a few years. And actually we've been blessed, I guess. We're both still living at home and doing our thing.
Life from better chemistry for Marvin.
Hey, also I think it does show some success when you do have a strong person at home backing you up all these years. I mean that's been an important part of the career.
Yeah, we've talked about
it has been for me as well. I mean, my wife's played an important role in what I've been able to do over the years. I know Ryan's has too, and so.
Oh, 100%. People want to talk about success. We haven't really talked about her, and it's really our wives. A good wife will let you do a lot of things in this industry and take care of your job. You're not having to worry about something going wrong at home because she's taking care of things. And man, I'm tremendously blessed in that regards.
67 years is a long time. I remember when I was a kid.
Hey, that's a long time to be picking up underwear.
Paul Harvey would always have the people on when they would hit 70, and there wasn't very many of them.
No.
And so 67 is that's big time. Congratulations on that.
Well, thank you.
I remember when Chemplex was kind of retiring them, and I called Marvin. I asked him. I said, "Hey, are you wanting to retire?" And he goes, "Man, not really. I just want something to go do." And that's when I ended up calling Brian over at Moon. I was like, "Hey, hire this guy. He'll do tremendously good for you." And he was like, and I remember one of the things when he was hiring him, his insurance agent goes, "Hey, was there a misprint on his year he was born?" And he's like, "Nope, it wasn't." And
You should command the lowest possible insurance premiums of any person in our industry because you obviously are indestructible and healthy. They should be like, you know what, this guy we're just going to cover for free. We're not even worried about him.
Well, I'm not sure. I wish, but I don't think we're indestructible, I'm afraid. But it has been interesting. Brian, I don't know if he means it or not, but Brian has said, I'd like to be able to say I had a 90-year-old man working for me at one time.
He's not far from it, is he?
No.
Well, I want to know, like, what do I need to do better to be better in our industry? What's some words of wisdom that you give everybody coming into our industry or been here as long as I have, which is, nothing in comparison to your career.
It's what to do better. One, I think I was at different times in my career. There's been times I just got up and thought, I hate to go to work. And then there's been times I thought, I can't wait to get out there and see what happens today because we're going to always do something. And I think if you can surround yourself with people that help you to have input, you can kind of bounce ideas off of each other. I know there's been times where I worked with a group that if you've got a problem, we've all got a problem. And actually, we would sometimes after work, after hours, just sit and kick that idea around. And usually, if you get 5 or 6 people, there's some good ideas that come up. And I guess that's the thing. Maybe I'm taking credit for what other people have done through the years, or people I've worked with. I've been fortunate in being around some fairly knowledgeable people, I will say. It's always been interesting, the different types of people in the industry. Some of them, I've worked with people that essentially had photographic memories. And I've worked with some of the same people that they could memorize it, but they had not 1 ounce of common sense of what to do with it.
Anybody come to mind that has impressed you the most over the years?
There's a man, he's passed away, which unfortunately, that's happened with a lot of my friends. But I'll say Bob Tyner. He actually, I was at Halliburton before he came there, but he came to work. Sort of interesting. He worked as a summer employee all the way through till he got his PhD in chemistry. And he walked in the lab and one day and told the manager, he said, I finished my degree and I'm ready to go to work full time now. And the manager looked at him and said, Bob, we've got a hiring freeze right now. I can't hire anybody. And, he said, well, you always told me since I'd worked all these summers that I'd have a job when I graduated. And the manager said, well, let me see what I can do. And at that time, the vice president of research was Bill Owsley. And he called Bill. And Bill, I guess, was old school because he said, well, if you told the man he has a job, then he has a job. So it was like that close to him not coming to work at all. And
Stand-up guy.
But yeah, I was impressed with that. He came in, he worked in the lab, and then he ended up going to the field. Anyway, worked at different jobs and ended up coming back around. He was vice president of research. He was my direct boss. I was acidizing coordinator, and he was vice president. It was really great working with him. And the way things changed at that high level, all of a sudden they laid off. They went through some changes. It was kind of interesting. They was, quote, I'll say 9 of us working what they called upstairs, managers and coordinators. They had what goes Project Go, and 2 years later, there's only 2 of us even working for the company on there. But anyway, Bob ended up going in with, if you've heard of Ely and Associates, he was the part of the end associates of it. But he was just one of those guys that seemed like he had it all. He had a PhD in chemistry, and he was raised in the oil patch, and he could talk to the presidents of companies, or he could work with a crew out on a job. I was impressed with him, I'll say. And he was dropped dead in his backyard on his 76th birthday, of all things.
Man.
What's interesting about that whole story too, Marvin, is they were really close to not even having him.
Yeah.
And losing that talent. Mm-hmm. I mean, here you said he made it all the way up to vice president. And if that one guy wouldn't have been like, no, you told him he was going to have a job, we're hiring him. Didn't care about the hiring freeze.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about.
And that's been part of our success too. You find good people and put them in the spot that they will flourish. Yes. And man, that's been our success story.
Yes. That there's always room for a good man.
Bob Tyner is a very, very important role model in my early career also. So when I started in Weatherford in 2004, and Weatherford was just getting started in the pressure pumping business, we had a large contract with Apache in western Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle, and Bob and Ely and Associates was over that project, and specifically Bob Tyner. And so he spent a lot of time on location and working with us. We would titrate all the tanks back then and do a lot of QA, QC work on site. And Bob was very patient and calm with me, a brand new engineer right out of school out there working. I didn't know what I was doing for a bunch of it. He would always take time to show me stuff. So I'd sitting there listening to you give credit to him. I saw all those same attributes that you saw in him as a young engineer. And I do have a funny story about Bob. So we were in West Texas, and our frac crew had got to where they were playing pranks on each other, and they were locking each other in the porta potties on site. And so we get ready to start a job. I'd done all my QA, QC work with Bob out in the lab trailer, and the guys had pressure tested and we're ready to pump. And I'm in the van. We've turned on Frac Pro, get everything going, and where's Bob? And so we sent somebody outside looking for him and couldn't find him. Came back in. He says, I don't know, his pickup's here, And this went on for 20 minutes. It's 100 degrees outside. It's a hot Texas Panhandle summer day. And I go out looking for him, and I happen to see a pickup parked in front of the porta potty, and I'm like, there's no way these guys did this. So I jumped in it, backed it out, and Bob Tyner walks out. He'd been locked in there. Our guys saw one of the frac heads run in there, came out before when they got the pickup. Bob had went in there, and so they locked Bob Tyner in the porta potty for like 20 minutes. And I let him out, and he just smiled real big and said, "Josh, I owe you a steak dinner for letting me out of there." He said, "Let's go start fracking." And I was scared he was going to run us off.
Wow.
Bob was a good guy.
Give me your last words of wisdom. I'm gonna get us all out of here. I need all of your input because, hey, anybody out there knows how to come write a biography? I'd probably join forces with him and get the biography, and hopefully you can get an encyclopedia out of you. That's what we all need.
Well, I appreciate your kind words, but there's a lot of people in the industry. There's some significant names out there like Tyner and different ones that have contributed, and so it's been a team effort, and it'll be an interesting. When I started working at Halliburton, in my mind I thought there may be no more oil production by the time I'm ready. By the time I was 65 and ready to retire, that's what I was thinking, that
somebody had gotten to you and giving you that narrative already.
Yes, it was already projected that we'd run out of oil. Yeah.
You're not even concerned about that now, are you?
No, it's still on the upward slope.
We continue to find resources.
Resources.
That was my biggest question. Do you think we're okay? Do you see a bright future for our industry?
There's actually even the alternate. It would not be the typical oil field, but there's some deposits called oil shales that actually there are literally billions of barrels of oil trapped in that. It's something you'd have to almost cook the shale to get the oil out of it. The tar sands, there's a lot of production in the tar sands. Of course, that's where the Keystone Pipeline, a lot of that oil from Canada was coming out of their tar sands there. So there's alternate sources, is what I'm saying on it. So.
Well, I'm going to cut everybody loose. I've taken up a good chunk of your time, and I can't thank you enough for them introducing me. It's about time. I'm going to now grill them about all the other people. If you want any time, you would be a very valuable podcast co-host with me. Josh isn't here all the time for me to hang out with. So, having somebody really smart next to me, and also because of your contacts in this industry, if you think about anybody else that, you would like to platform, please, reach out to them and me and bring them in here. You're so welcome here anytime.
Oh, I appreciate that. I may take you up on that offer.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more. This should not be a one-off. This should be a series.
Marvin, thank you for coming in. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you all for putting up with me, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and Ryan, we'll forgive you. I love you, though. You can catch Ryan at the next show. Where are you playing at next?
Nowhere even close.
All right, everybody wave the camera. Say goodbye. Amen. And there, it's always me, guys. Sorry.
I'm not recording a song.
Why would you not trust me to record a song?
I don't want to. I don't want to record a song.
But you're a good singer. Don't you think you should come in here more often and record songs for me? Don't you love me anymore? Mm-hmm. And what would you sing to me if I was
I heard a new one the other day.
If I was your husband, what song would you sing to me?
I don't need your fucking lip. That's what I would sing.
Just because of our interaction.
That hand off your hip.